So we have some breaking news. A new Ipsos Reuters poll puts Bernie Sanders in first place nationally in the 2020 Democratic presidential primary. In this poll, Bernie's sitting in first at 17, 2 points ahead of Biden at 15, 7 points ahead of Warren, who's at 10. No one else is above 10. But beyond those really strong top-line numbers for Bernie Sanders, he polls really well on the issues that matter to Democrats. This poll asked people who was strongest on a series of particular issues, and I don't need to go through all of them, but Bernie Sanders wins almost every single one. Jobs, the environment, immigration, being progressive, bringing a new and unique voice. Bernie wins almost every single one. And that's just one of the reasons why he's polling in first place. Because on many of these issues, Bernie Sanders is polling better than his top line number, which means that even people who aren't supporting Bernie Sanders right now acknowledge that he's the one, more than anyone else, bringing the policies and energy and ideas that's good for the Democratic Party going forward. Those people may be converted to him, but even if they aren't, they're sure to respect him, and they're likely to work for and with him if Bernie Sanders wins the nomination. But there's a couple key roadblocks here for Bernie Sanders in this poll, and it's the same old story we've been hearing poll after poll after poll. And it goes down to the question of party unity and especially electability. In this poll, Joe Biden beats Bernie Sanders on 2 issues and only 2 issues. And that's the only time anyone beats Bernie on anything. Joe Biden ekes out Bernie on the question of unifying the Democratic Party, but he rather trounces Bernie on the question of electability. And that means that the people polled, whether it's accurate or not, fair or not, really see Joe Biden as uniquely poised to defeat Donald Trump in the 2020 presidential election. And the thing is that the facts don't bear out that opinion. If we look at the national matchup polls, hypotheticals between Trump and the leading Democrats, both Sanders and Biden, frankly, do rather well against Trump. But that doesn't mean that Joe Biden is uniquely electable. That means that both Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden could do well against Trump. And so when you're talking about electability as a comparator between the two, it should be more of a wash and less of an outright advantage for Joe Biden. And it's also crucial to understand, and Bernie Sanders has noted this, and many others, including myself, have noted this, that Joe Biden may poll well now, but the particular legacy of Joe Biden is the very sort of legacy that will demotivate potential progressive voters in that 2020 election. His takes on trade deals, the Iraq War, bankruptcy, the rights of African Americans, I can go on and on and on, his cuts to Social Security or his desire to cut Social Security, all are the sort of things that Donald Trump will disingenuously attack, will demotivate potential Democratic voters, will lower turnout, or at least keep turnout from rising, and increase the odds of a Donald Trump victory and a Republican victory in the House and Senate. That's the simple reality. I know the polling right now shows a lot of Democrats believe in Joe Biden, but I just don't know if he's going to withstand those sorts of attacks from a right-of-center populist like Trump, whereas Bernie Sanders is the perfect antidote to a candidate like Trump. You can't attack him like you'd attack Joe Biden. And from what I've seen, the Republican attacks on Bernie Sanders are so absurd that I really don't believe they're going to have any major effect with any voter that wasn't already locked in to vote Republican anyway. But this still really does matter, because in this poll, they also asked people, what is driving your decision? What matters most to you from these issues? I'm paraphrasing here. But what it showed was that by far, a strong plurality on a list of long issues put electing somebody to beat Trump as the number one goal. By far and away the biggest issue to Democratic voters. So, when you look at this And you see that it's a narrow race between Bernie and Biden, 17-15, but that Biden has huge advantages when it comes to electability, and when electability itself is considered such a vital issue for the people participating in this poll, who may well form a representative, sample of the primary voting base. It becomes absolutely clear that Bernie Sanders supporters really do need to be fighting first and foremost to dispel the misinformation and misconceptions around electability, challenging Joe Biden's mythology that he's, the most electable, the only electable candidate, and also building up the reasons why Bernie Sanders is going to be great in a general election. And I've talked about this before, and others have too. Bernie Sanders has the program, has the vision, has the history, has the energy that's going to mobilize progressive voters like never before. That's going to mobilize young people. We saw it today with the Sunrise Movement endorsement. That's going to mobilize those who maybe voted for Barack Obama but believed in neither Clinton's neoliberalism or the far-right populism of Donald Trump and chose to stay home. Bernie Sanders is going to give millions of people something to believe in. Those regular voters might become steadfast Bernie Sanders volunteers. And those people who maybe don't vote because they don't feel that politicians represent them and those like them will have a champion for the first time maybe ever in Bernie Sanders. And we need to do that work because it's clear that Democrats, that potential voters in this primary process, do really like Bernie Sanders. They like him. They like his ideas. They like what he brings to the table. Heck, he is winning right now. But when it comes to electability, Biden has a huge edge over Bernie, and that edge has to be chipped away at. Because think about it. If Bernie is winning or is in a statistical tie with Biden, and Biden has that huge advantage in the most important category to Democratic voters, what kind of lead can Bernie build if we can convince people that Joe Biden isn't anything special or that Bernie Sanders in reality is the one poised to defeat Trump? We could make this a much larger and more commanding lead for Bernie Sanders to help him win the nomination as quickly as possible so that he can focus on defeating Donald Trump and bringing progressive values into the White House for the first time in generations.